You are now listening to the I Think I Love My Wife podcast. And this is your best friend's best friend, Chidozie Okafor, ready to take you on another journey. Are you with me? Because I'm ready. Let's get it. This episode is sponsored by Nello Effect, a coaching and consulting service that helps people turn mindfulness into action as they navigate the dating world as well as their relationships. Follow on Instagram at Nello.Effect and find more information in the episode description. In this episode, we focus on the challenges of satisfying your passions and your partner, discussing the importance of having someone that supports you, exploring the tough calls you have to make, and identifying when to get out, while examining how generational differences impact dating today and how we pursue relationships. So today we have another episode with one of my good friends, Darrin. Say hello, Darrin.
Hello, Chidozie. Excited to be here. Very excited.
I'm excited to have you. I'm excited for you to share your stories.
Looking forward to it, man.
Your relationship.
Yes.
Give some of your perspective and let people hear how you've gotten to where you've gotten with your marriage.
Yeah.
But before we start, like every show, I want to start a toast. And so today, let's toast to trials, tribulations, and the success that comes with it.
Black boy joy.
Black boy joy.
There we go.
Black girl magic.
Can we drink it too?
It's your cup.
Okay, perfect. Can I keep the cup? This
Nah,
nice cup.
but yeah, give me that cup back. Okay.
Damn.
And so
Cheap.
I want to start off with just like we do all the time. Just let people know who you are about you. It's good, right? This is that. I looked it up for you. This is that Suntory. I didn't know Suntory made vodka.
I've had the whiskey version, and that destroyed my life for like 3 days. So,
But this vodka's smooth though. I don't even drink vodka, but I like this vodka.
You gotta drink vodka. Diddy got vodka.
Diddy got a lot of things. But anyways, we want to let people know about you and your relationship.
Awesome.
Just some of the general demographic information. So how long have you known your wife?
I have known my wife since the year of our Lord 2003.
So you're going on only... Oh, that's like 16 years?
We first met in high school.
Okay.
Actually.
High school sweethearts?
No, we were not high school sweethearts at all. We had a mutual best friend, and I'll never forget, we had this thing called the Players Ball. I went to
Did they
private
play
school.
the International Players Anthem?
This was before that had dropped. But had they had it, I'm pretty sure that would have been the opening to the event. But I'll never forget my friend coming and introducing her and saying, "Hey, Darrin, I want you to meet so and so." And I was like, "Oh, how you doing?" And it was a handshake, a smile, and that was it. And that we didn't speak again probably for maybe 2-3 years later.
Okay. Yeah. And so, how long did you guys date before you proposed?
First proposal. So
there are two proposals.
We had two. So we'll get into that. We had two proposals. So we started dating February 2007. And I proposed, I believe it was 2012.
So for those that can't do the numbers, that was 5 years?
5 years.
Okay.
2012, yep, when she finished law school. Yeah.
And so that didn't work out. And then how long
It did not work out.
The second. And we can go into why later.
Yeah, so unique story, but that did not work out, that proposal. We were engaged. She accepted. We were engaged for about maybe 5 or 6 months, and we broke it off. It wasn't really mutual. It was some things I had done and mistakes I had made, and we broke that off, and then we didn't exchange words literally for another year. No text messages, no phone calls. It was almost as if we didn't exist to the other person. And then we got back together briefly, had another little breakup, and then life changes things and changes in situations, and we end up getting back together again. And then so that second proposal was in 2015.
So you guys are going up on 4 years?
4 years.
End of the year, right?
4 years of us getting back together. Yeah.
Oh, well, when did you guys get married then?
We got married 2017.
Okay, so you guys been married for almost 2 years.
Married 2 years. Yep.
Okay,
Married 2 years.
And so, what do you do for a living?
I for the past 5 years, I was in consulting. I worked with a large consulting firm. I'm actually transitioning to a different role out of consulting, moving into industry. And we can get into those reasons later as well. And so I'll be able to have the 9 to 5 instead of being on the road Monday through Thursday.
Gotcha. So. And we could definitely explore how that impacted your relationship. What does your wife do for a living?
She is an attorney.
Okay. And so when I think how we grow up is super important. So I just like to put that context out there. Mm-hmm. And so in terms of your parents in your life and marital status, what does that look like?
Yeah. So my parents actually are together now. Before I was even born, I have an older sister. She's 6 years older. My parents were married. They got divorced and then got back together and then had me. So it's funny. I didn't even know about them getting divorced and whatnot until maybe I was in high school.
Gotcha.
Which is pretty crazy.
Okay.
But they're still together today, still living in the same house I grew up in.
So how long have they been married?
Ooh.
We can do total years.
Total years? I mean, if you ask them, they probably wouldn't even be able to tell you. So
as long as you've been born.
Yeah, as long as I've been. I would probably say a year before I was born, so maybe 2 years before I was born.
4 years?
Yeah, 30, at least 30, 32, 33 years.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And so your wife, in terms of her her parents, what does that look like?
So her parents are divorced. They've been divorced for several years, since she was maybe first or second grade. So they got divorced when she was really young. Her father was married before he got with her mother. So he has 3 children who have children that are older than us.
Oh, wow.
Believe it or not. So she's lived most of her life with a single parent, with just her mother.
And so would you say her father was around at all or not?
He probably not as much as he probably could have or should have been. Yeah.
And that's fine. I just like to have people understand that, so people have context for how people may think and how certain things may impact them, given what their upbringing was like, and who was there, who wasn't there. I
think that has definitely shaped our relationship, how we interact, and how she views the relationship and how it should be. And one of the reasons why I love her so much as well. So
speaking of love, my favorite question is, what do you love about your wife?
So perfect segue. So I love her independence. And the ability to kind of manage her own life and not rely on someone else for her happiness. And some people say, "Oh, that's okay." The reason that's important to me is, I've had a few girlfriends in the past, and one thing I would always ask them is, if something happened to me, how would you feel? And they would always say something along the lines of, they'd be devastated and they'd be crushed, they'd be hurt, they wouldn't know how they could move on. And they had shown it in some of the interactions and the behaviors in the relationship. My wife is the first person who, when I asked her that question, she was just like, life moves on. She's like, I'll move on and I hope your family is able to mourn you and they're happy with the outcome, so she was the first, and she told me that, and I was like, oh, that's different. She doesn't rely on me, or she's, I'm not her end all be all. So that was important.
I don't think I've ever heard that in terms of a response.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. What would you say makes her special? Or special to you?
Special to me. So she a lot of times sees things in me that I don't see in myself. Even though she may not be 100% positive about, things that she's doing in her life, she's always been there and very supportive of me. When I was young, I tried to start a clothing brand, and she was one of the key supporters. Even though it maybe took me away from our relationship for extended periods of time, she was still around, available, out to help and do whatever she could to create an environment for me to be successful. So that was a great thing. Unfortunately, I didn't handle that very well, But just to, you hear a lot of stories about, Deion Cole has a, comedian. He has a joke where every woman wants a man who makes a lot of money, but they always want a man that's always around. And he talks about how that's a lot of times impossible, because if you have a lot of money, that means you're working hard and you're gone, you're away for a long period of time. But you want him always home, and you say, yeah, I can be always home. I can be unemployed, and I'm home all the time. I'm always around you. And she never gave me any of that grief. She was just like, go out, do your thing, do what you need to do. I'm here to support you. Let me know how I can help. And so that was awesome. And that's how I knew she was different and she was unique from other women I had dated or talked to in the past.
No, that's real. I think people in this, even in this podcast, everybody starting a podcast or blog or side hustle, whatever, that entrepreneurial hustle is real.
Yeah.
And it's harder than people think. And I think one of the things that we don't talk about the most is how that impacts someone in a relationship.
Yeah.
Also, similarly to the consultant life and being gone. So I think being in that space and having someone that let's call them the rider that you have, it just speaks volume when you can trust that person has you covered, or is supporting that and you don't feel guilty for doing whatever you need to do to make those things happen.
And, I've had many friends who have tried to pursue entrepreneurial opportunities, and they have stopped or shut that down because of their partner and their partner's reservations or their partner's concerns. And at early stages in their life, they prioritize their partner's happiness over their own personal success. And one thing my wife told me, and this was, while we were discussing, breaking off our first engagement, is she said, I understand that a man is different from a woman. A woman can be happy and satisfied by having a great relationship, but a man typically is not happy or satisfied if his career is not going the direction that she wants. And at that point in my life, I was in a situation where I was pursuing the entrepreneurial exploits, and they weren't going as well as I would have hoped. And she could feel that stress and that those challenges and the things I was dealing with. So obviously she was upset and disappointed and sad that we were breaking off the engagement. But she said, I understand. You're not happy where you are career-wise, and that's impacting everything around you, because that's how men and women are wired differently, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that a little bit later, because I think that's an important factor for men in terms of what they think about. And one of the things that I want to highlight with these conversations is that, sometimes you may see certain behaviors from a man that you don't understand. And so this is my way of allowing us to put the thought behind it. Like, what's going on through your heads?
Right.
Why were you holding back? Why did you do that? Because that didn't, just like some things that they do don't make sense to us.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things, whether it's mental health, whether it's priorities that are very much different. Yeah. Like you talked about with being more financially secure or stable, that certain actions that you may, or behaviors you may exhibit are related to that may not being the way that you want it to be yet, and you're acting out or responding in a way that may be detrimental to other things that are important but not necessarily as equal yet in your life. And so as we think about it, and I talked to you several times about the premise of this, but was there a moment that hit you when you were like, and I think I love this woman? How did you know that she was the person you wanted to marry, that you were ready to marry, that you loved her?
Yeah. I would say there's two instances. And even when we broke off our first engagement, I even told her, I said, at the end of the day, I still plan to be with you. I'm just not ready right now. But
hold on. So I just want to make sure that I can understand it.
Yeah.
You're seeing the woman of your dreams, or the woman that you can see a future with.
Right.
And you were close to locking that down.
Right.
It is at a point where you're going to lose it.
Yeah. And
you were telling her that I want to be with you, but I'm not ready for you right now.
Exactly.
And I think I'm pausing there to understand, one, what was her response to that? And you gave us some allusion to it. But what would be the general woman's response to that?
Yeah.
And two, I'm also in some kind of ways, as I'm thinking about it real time, is there's a level of unselfishness or selflessness that has to go in realizing that and communicating that.
Yeah.
Hey, I want you, but I ain't ready to give you what you need right now. And sometimes when people are dating, they're like a guy, I tend to think that women are risk averse.
Right.
And so you have guys that are in situations that they're not ready for, and they act out, they cheat and do whatever.
Exactly.
And they have guys that are being super intentional, and they say, hey, I don't want this, or I'm not ready for it.
Right.
And it comes off like, hey, why'd you break up with me? You hurt my feelings. But in the twist of it, there's a selflessness that goes on to let the person know, like, yo, I am not ready to give you what you need, and I recognize that. So it's best for us to cut it off than make things worse.
And so it's funny. So it's funny because you called it selflessness, and this is the first time I never even thought about it as selflessness. I thought about it as having to be selfish in the moment to feel like I had, completely exhausted all opportunities or possibilities of being, this behemoth of individual in my own career from an entrepreneur standpoint.
Well, don't get it twisted. It's selfish.
Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah. Well,
it's selfish, but that's what.
But I didn't think about that. I mean, I do agree with you though. That does take some selflessness to say, I cannot be what you need right now. And just to give. So what essentially happened is when we broke up the engagement, it came to a point where, my wife my fiance at the time had moved out to live with me where we were living. And it was difficult for her to find opportunity because as an attorney in this city, it was just a challenge. And so she moved back home to Dallas, Texas, where we're from. And she basically gave me an ultimatum and said, I need you to move back in 3 months or else we're going to have to reevaluate this whole situation. And for me, it's the competitor in me, competitor in probably a lot of men in general, just people who, I grew up playing sports. You never want to say it's over, right? And I said, I can't commit to that because I still feel like I have a chance to be great.
You're like Tony Parker, like I got a couple years.
You're always like, just give me one more chance, baby, give me one more chance. Like I felt I still had, one more good run in me to pursue my passion in my business where I was living. And so I basically said, well, I'm not going to deal with this ultimatum. And that's what led to the end of the engagement. So, you talk about like that selflessness of basically saying, hey, like I cannot be what you need and what you want right now. But I knew that she was the one because everything that I had gone through to get to that point from a business standpoint, entrepreneur standpoint, I literally packed up and left. I gave up a really, really good job opportunity to pursue this entrepreneurial dream of mine. And everyone told me I should take this job. And she was the only one who said, hey, whatever you decide, I'm going to be with you and support you 100%. Right. So she had been with me from day one. And I knew it was going to be difficult to find that in someone else. And honestly, I wasn't going to look for somebody else to have that, right? I understood I need to focus on that goal of mine and then pursue it 100%. And if it doesn't happen, figure out some kind of way to, readjust my priorities and my goals in life and understand what my new life is going to be and where she fit in, if at all, at that point. But I was always confident, and she'll even I always said, I was like, we're going to be together at the end anyway, right? So
no, it makes sense. I just highlighted it because I think
it's rare.
People, it's rare,
Yeah.
one, but people are typically inherently selfish.
Yeah.
And so on the outside, surface level, it looks mad selfish. It's like, hey, you see this person that you want, and you're willing to bet and risk her finding someone else or whatnot, or you guys not being together to pursue something that you spent a lot of time, invested a lot of energy in. That's not working out for you. Right. And so inherently it is selfish, but I think the decision to do that is selfish, but in a twisted way it's selfless because you're saying, I recognize this and I don't want to keep pulling you in the mud with this, knowing that like it's not going to make you happy too. And there's a selflessness in taking that risk to make sure that person, maybe not in the short term, but in the longer term is happy.
I can't be what you need right now.
Yeah, and I think there's a selflessness in that. And those are sometimes, I think as a leader of a family or a relationship are the tough calls you have to make.
Yeah.
and you deal with what happens next in that. And so I was just thinking about it as you said it, and so it was selfish, but it was selfless. And I also think that when you're dating and you're dating seriously, I will probably say this in every interview.
Yeah.
That until you get married and you have that covenant,
Yeah.
it is the most selflessly selfish experience that you'll have,
Yeah.
because you have to pour into someone and give selflessly, but you also have to be looking for what you need in a very selfish manner.
And there's no guarantees.
And there's no guarantees in it, so you're being even more cautious than selfish.
Yeah.
While being selfless in the interactions that you're having. And so I'll continue to say it. I might make a T-shirt that says "Selfishly Selfish," but
and I'm buying 5 of them.
But it just made me think about that. And so moving along, were you caught off guard when you realized that, like, because like you're a little bit different in the sense that you guys met young. You guys started dating in your 20s, college days, and so
20s.
I would assume that you weren't like, I'm going to start dating this person and this is to get married. Like, you weren't looking for marriage in that.
Yeah.
And so at what point were you caught off guard by it? I'm assuming you were caught off guard, like, yo, this is my person. Like, I can't be just thinking about it through like we're just dating, having fun.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have to be more serious about it.
You know what when it caught me off guard is, you know, as I mentioned, you know, after college, I moved out to the West Coast, and you know, I obviously, you know, I made some mistakes, and we broke up, and in that time period, I dated other people, and it was dating other people from all over from different spectrums, different backgrounds, you know, and realizing like nobody matched that connection or that chemistry that I had with my now wife, right? It was and I was in Los Angeles, and you know, Los Angeles melting pot, people from all over the world are living there.
I feel like just good looking people just say, I'm going to move to Los Angeles.
Yeah, it's you know, and I still tell this story today when people ask, and I don't know, my wife's never heard this, but you know, people ask me questions about how my experience was living in Los Angeles, and I say, here's how I can quickly sum it up. I believe I became a man there because of what I experienced, and then they asked me about the type of women there, and I said, to this day, one of the prettiest women I ever saw was working at In-N-Out Burger, and I met her while I was getting food. I think maybe my second week in Los Angeles, to this day, I say, yeah, that's probably one of the prettiest people I had ever seen.
Did you pull?
No, I didn't actually. I did not actually. I didn't even try because I was used to coming from an environment of. You know, you working at the chicken joint, the burger joint.
You was judging.
You probably ratchet. Yeah, you probably ratchet, and you know. But I had to remind myself, like, hey, I'm in Los Angeles now.
And that's a normal thing for people hustling.
You're in Los Angeles now. These people are trying to be models and actresses and pursue all type of exploits. So they're just taking any job they can to get money to pass the time. So, you know, when I started dating other people and realizing that they're really, really cool, but there's something missing. That's when I realized, like, you know, the one I was dating, I think she might be the one because nobody else is replicating that, right? So,
do you feel like it takes that sometimes, or because
absolutely,
because you see people that, you know, they high school sweethearts or
trash,
or in college lovebirds, right?
Yeah, and
they're still together, and they will say they're still happy. And I think there's a level of happiness that comes because you guys grew up with each other, so you guys know each other very well. But I think there's how do I say it? I think there's a different level of satisfaction when you've seen what's out there and you say, I choose this.
You're significantly, like, we are not the same people we were 5 years ago. So to think that you can meet somebody when you're 18, 19, even in the early 20s, and that is your forever love, and you know, it's difficult, especially if you've never been with anybody else, because there's nothing to compare that person to. I have a perfect story. My current, or my, you know, former job, you know, I'm in transition to another position, but there's a guy who's working there, and you know, he just got married, you know, late last year, and I asked him about his wife. I said, you know, when did you meet your wife? He said, oh, we met in high school. They started dating when they were sophomores in high school. I said, oh, wow, cool. And I said, so what's the story there? Said they dated all through high school, went to the same college together. This guy was in judo. She was in judo as well. So they were part of the judo team at the college they went to. And their first job out of college, they worked at the same place together. So where he was working with me, that was his first time not working with her or being around her. And we had a new consultant come on the project, and he was blatantly flirting with this person. And it was clear that he was seeing something like, wow, like it wasn't like, I don't think he found her like just wildly attractive. It's just like, oh, wow, like I
never heard a giggle like that before.
Yeah, like
my jokes.
He's never been in a situation where his wife wasn't around. High school together, college together, you're in the same clubs together in college, you work for the same companies when you graduate. He's never been in an environment for that extended period of time where he wasn't seeing his wife. His wife was overseas a lot, traveling for the job where he used to work. And it was just clearly obvious. It was like, man, he's never... And so, we started talking internally. It's like, okay, what's the over-under on when he's going, mess around and be creeping out of her hotel room or something, or make a mistake. And it was funny because, 3 weeks later after this girl was on the project, we believe maybe somebody told him, hey, like you kind of flirting with this chick. He brings a picture of him and his wife from their honeymoon and sets it on the desk. Now, mind you, we're consultants.
I was about to say, what desk do you have?
We got like the working space for the clients. I have never in my life seen anybody bring a picture of any sort and set it there at their desk. But I feel like he did that as a reminder to him, like, hey, you got a wife at home.
He's like, I'm bringing her to work too.
Chill out. Yeah. And remind the girl he was talking to that he had a wife who was about, and this girl was about to get married as well. So, the high school sweethearts, I think it's possible, but I think I don't think it's good to meet somebody in high school, stay with them all throughout, and never have any other experiences outside of that, because you become completely different people. And that was one of our challenges. Is we started dating when we were 20-something. Before I even had an idea to be an entrepreneur, I became an entrepreneur. I experienced things I hadn't experienced. She experienced things she hadn't experienced in law school. And we were still trying to force it when we hadn't really pursued or tried other things.
Explored other things.
Yeah, and understood, like, my wife liked that person when I was 20, but I'm no longer that person now, and I'm 25. Does she like? I don't know if she's going to like that person. And she did like that person. That's why we clashed. But I matured out of that phase as well and moved on to something else. And then we were able to come back together where we had, instead of competing goals in life, we were way more compatible than we were when we originally met. And it's funny. I had a girl I dated who I thought was going to be a high school sweetheart. And I remember going, I was about to go off to college, and my dad was like, so have you officially broken up with her yet? And I was like stunned. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, have you told her like it's over, like you're going to break up with her? Because she was still in high school. She was young and I was going to college. And I was like, no, we're going to stay together. And he just looked at me and started laughing. And my dad has a really, weird sense of humor. But he just started laughing. It was one of those like, all right, son, like we'll see how long this lasts. Yeah. Right. Because he knew. So
no, it's interesting because I think there's multiple ways it can happen. Right.
Very good vodka, by the way. Sorry. I had to say that. Yeah.
There's multiple ways it can happen. And I think in what you get from meeting someone young and growing with them is like, we grew up together, we figured it out together.
Yeah.
But for a lot of people, there's this unknown that you constantly deal with, right? Yeah. It's like, what if you don't know if the grass is greener because you've never been on the other side of the lawn, right? And then for other side of it is the other side of the spectrum. Mm-hmm. You've had all these experiences, you've done life to figure out what some of your preferences are, or how you like things to be. And so that joining or union becomes harder because you're taking very much different people and trying to make them one again.
Exactly.
And so I think in either way, I guess the lesson is you don't avoid issues, right? And so someone told me, he was talking to me about my relationship, he was like, what are you waiting to find out?
Yeah.
He said, if you feel like this person has a good heart and cares about you, what else are you waiting to find out? He's like, marriage is the journey. He's like, you don't become perfect and set or figure out everything that you want and then you get married to enjoy those things because when you have kids, just life happens. Life is undefeated. Yeah. And so there's some of the changes you talked about are going to happen, whether they happen at 26 or 46.
Yeah.
And so he's like, the joys of marriage is that you have someone that's there with you to celebrate those developments, there with you to endure those developments, or they're with you to support you through those developments. And so when he said that, I was like, you're right, because I think as we get older, we're like, I got to get things the way I like it and then do marriage, versus the journey of it is the beauty of marriage. Yeah. I'm still wrapping my head around it. I don't know if I agree 100%, but it was a different perspective that I was like, you know what? I think as we get older and people are getting married later, because people used to get married super young, that I think we're losing sight of that in some ways. That like part of the beauty of marriage is not like, oh, we having kids and building a family, but that journey of just doing life with someone and taking on some of those challenges together.
And we're really, the first generation of African Americans that have approached life from the standpoint of building wealth, right?
Of course.
We were really the first generation, I think, that has obviously the number of opportunities, but just came into it that way. Like my mom did not go into life saying, hey, I want to build a big company or a business or have a great job making, six figures and have estate taxes and do, her goal was just to, meet a good man, have kids and do, as good as my grandparents. My grandparents did relatively well, but do as good as my grandparents. My dad, who grew up on welfare, went through the streets and collected cans at one point in his life to take care of his nephews when his sister was in prison. Like his idea was, okay, I'm not going to be in the NFL anymore. Okay, how am I going to survive? Like, it's just like, that was the mentality. And now we are the ones who go to good private schools, go to great colleges, work for top 4, big firms and say, hey, I want to build wealth. I want to build legacy. I want my grandkids to say, yes, this money came from my great-great-great-grandfather who established XYZ trust, and it just trickled down. So we are approaching life and we have challenges that our parents didn't have. So it's hard for us to go to them for advice in certain situations. And when you say we're on this journey together, that was me trying to pursue that business. Like, my wife was there on that journey and I saw how she responded to that. But
you didn't lock her up.
And well, because I was still on the journey and she, she knew I was past the journey. She's like,
it's over. Kobe, sit down. Kobe, sit down. Kobe, sit your black ass.
One thing I do love about her is she does have the ability to sometimes see in the future, which I say is a good attribute of a consultant, is the ability to see things
that haven't happened
a couple of steps ahead. And she saw that probably a year and a half ahead. She's like, I'm talking to him and I'm asking him how things are going and status updates. We're still in red trending down or red trending flat, and she's like,
where's the green?
She's like, when is we gonna get the yellow at some point? You got a resolution plan, you got a contingency plan in effect. So she saw that ahead of time sooner than I did.
Let's call it a woman's intuition.
And another thing too is we can't expect people to wait forever.
True,
right?
Very true.
There's a funny movie where it's Taraji P. Henson and I forgot, I don't know their guy's name, and her family hates this dude, and he's trying to put together that invention. Have you seen that movie?
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
I love that movie.
I forget what it is.
Just because the dude wins, he gets the money.
What is the name of that movie?
So my wife hates that movie.
I'm gonna look it up. But I know what you're talking about.
But I love that movie. But I understand Taraji's role in that is she can't wait forever for your invention to blow, and that was the phrase in the movie. Oh, his thing hit. That was his invention hit, and she can't wait for 15, 20 years for it to hit. And my wife was coming out of law school, ready to pursue her career and achieve these lifestyle, family, career goals. And here I was still trying to get my business to hit. And so she was essentially saying, I stuck through it for 4 or 5 years. Now it's time to make a decision. Are either you're turning the corner in a month and a half, 2 months, 3 months, or you're saying, okay, let me shift gears now to another atmosphere or another goal, which is what I essentially did. And she asked, why do you feel you're ready now? And I told her, I said, because I got it out of my system. I tried to do what I wanted to do at that point in life. I wasn't successful. So now I'm attacking building a family, building a legacy, building a lifestyle for myself and for my wife as fervently and diligently as I did my entrepreneurial exploits, right?
Are you sure it was Taraji?
I'm positive it's Taraji.
I know what movie you're talking about, but I didn't know. I didn't realize it was Taraji.
It's absolutely Taraji.
All right, we'll keep talking. I'm gonna figure this out. It'll come to me. That was a good movie. That was a good movie.
That was a great movie. Right.
Okay, and so I think one of the things that you said just now really stuck with me because I've never thought about it that way. But you're right. We are in a situation or in a generation, especially in the black or brown people of color community, where you know what our parents were striving for and looking for, and what success was, is totally different than what it is for us. And so now you see women, especially, grinding hard, accomplishing things that their mothers probably would have never thought they would have accomplished.
Never thought about.
And so it's like a dichotomy between like what you saw growing up and the roles your mother, aunt, grandmother played, and what you see ahead of you as all for the taking. And how do you balance that? Mentally. I think more so for women, but also for men, because what was achievable and attainable is very different. And so we're in this like, I think both of us probably would have said our parents growing up, we did fine. You went to private school. I didn't. But parents probably made, over dual income, over 100,000, less than 2, something like that. Lived well. And so now when you're in an environment where you're like, I'm making that or close to that just by myself, and I can make more.
Right.
Let's go. Let's grind.
And I don't know if you see it this way sometimes. Is I look at it as, I make almost more than my parents did combined at any point in their life. And I remember the time when my mother found out how much I was making, and this was 3 years ago. And the shock on her face was like, what? And then when I told her how much I made last year, she almost came to tears. Like, it was almost like, what? Like, you make that much money? But I see it also as, man, I still feel like I'm struggling. Like, I
feel real poor.
Yeah, bro, I feel like me and my wife, we have conversations about money all the time. I still feel like, man, we just ain't there. And I'm thinking, man, my parents raised 2 children, sent me to private school, sent both of us to college, and
I don't know how they did it. I don't know how they did it.
And I'm thinking like, well, maybe I just didn't see the stress on their face. I'm thinking like, man, how did they do that? So to me, it feels like they did it easily, right? But yeah, I mean, completely different world. I mean, we were the Facebook generation, right? 2004, college. That's when Facebook took off. To us, we see people making millions of dollars off of Instagram ads. It's just another world of money, opportunity that our parents never even imagined.
Side note, I always wonder what they're going to do when they're 60. Or like 40, when you don't look as great. And there's a new generation of Instagram models out there. It's like, okay, you're 40. What do you put on your resume?
Well, then they transition their lives to basketball wives.
Those are those
Love and Hip Hop or something else,
or Walmart greeter.
Yeah. Or you better hope they save them checks.
Fair. All right, let's get
half these people probably living on mattresses and that's it in their apartments. I know that for a fact.
Don't get me started.
Yeah, I lived in Los Angeles. I know how these people were living. So
all right, let's get back to your wife.
Okay.
So walk me through and kind of in summary, what made you propose to her the second time? I know you guys did it the first go around. You weren't ready. So your second go around, what made you, or why did you propose to her? And were you 100% confident that she was the one? And I think I know the answer to that. But
so even just leading up to that, so we broke up the first time. We didn't speak for an entire year plus, which I think is important as well. We didn't have any communication at all. And I think some people break up and they try to force it and have these. We didn't have any communication at all. So when it was time, or I felt comfortable to say, hey, I want to go back and get her again, it was, I had a career change. I had finally got the entrepreneurial stuff out of my mind. And I said, okay, my next goal is to build the family, build the legacy, and find my partner, get back with my partner. And I moved back to Dallas. My first objective was to find her. We went on a dinner date. We had a conversation, and I basically poured out my heart and told her exactly what I wanted, how I wanted it. And we got back together. We dated, obviously, first girlfriend, boyfriend. We did that for about 9 months, and then she got a job to move to DC, and it was dun dun dun. She came to me and said, "Hey, I got a job in DC, but I got to be there next week." That's government. They're crazy, and she said, "Are you going to come with me?" And we knew that I did not handle long distance very well. So that was essentially the conversation that said, are we going to stay together and eventually get married and move on, or is this going to be it? And I told her, I'm coming with you. And so she moved out there. I came 3 weeks later. And in my mind at that point, I started the clock of like, okay, cool, when I'm going to propose. And at that point, it was, I made the decision to move with her. So,
but even with that move, you were still traveling.
Still traveling, yeah. Still gone. I was consultant, so I was still traveling. But I made the decision to leave my rent-free environment, living with my parents, to say, okay, I'll move to DC with you and pay the DC rent with you. And so that, to me, that was saying, okay, this is going to be your wife. And so I moved out there with her, and the next step was essentially just saving up for a ring. So that's because the first one, obviously, you gotta. So
what did you do with the ring? The first
one, I sold that.
Okay, she didn't keep it.
And yeah, it was. I sold it. And
how do you feel about people that say they want to keep the ring? She was like, Darrin, I'm keeping this ring.
So when I said that we didn't speak at all after we broke up the engagement, that was somewhat false. We had I think a 4-text exchange.
Give me that ring back. I'll be here.
It was like what did Drake say in the song? Like, you can't keep that ring. It was really about the ring, and her being the attorney that she is. Every state has their own law about returning rings, and Texas happens to have a law where the person who received the ring does not have to give it back by law. If they are in possession, they can keep the ring. And since I proposed in Texas,
it is depending on where you propose.
Depends on where you propose.
Fellas,
yep.
You may want to look that up.
And I think California is a state where they require you to return the ring, but Texas, it's property, right? So they have possession.
Hey, fellas, if you're not sure, take that trip out there to California.
Take
propose
a trip
out there, just so you have options.
Go, yeah. Read the state laws before you. No, I'm just kidding. That was the ring situation.
So what was different? Because if I'm understanding you correctly, you guys are both in Dallas,
yep,
rekindling the relationship.
Right.
And what I'm, gathering through this was the catalyst for you saying, hey, I need to get on proposal status was, okay, she's moving and I'm going to move with her.
Yeah.
But let's say that offer never came and she was still working in Dallas. What would have been the difference? Like, would it taken you longer to get to that stage? What was different about?
No, I think it would have taken the same amount of time, maybe less, because obviously financially being afford a ring. But like I said before, when I put the entrepreneurial stuff behind me and I said, I'm moving on. I'm going to be the corporate America guy and whatnot. I knew what I wanted, and I knew who I wanted. I knew I wanted to have my wife, and I knew who I wanted to be my wife. So when I moved back to Dallas, and she always says, "Oh, that's not why you moved back to Dallas. You moved back to Dallas to save on rent." I had actually just moved into a new apartment in Los Angeles, and I changed jobs. And when I changed that job, and I went to a job that I thought at the time was the most money I had ever made, and it was a consulting, I said, okay, now I'm ready to build that family. The first priority was, how do I get her back? And I said, I have to leave LA. That's the only way I can do it. So I moved back to Dallas, and I moved back, I think maybe like on a Tuesday, and like that Thursday, Friday, we went out to dinner. And when I told her what my goal was and what I wanted and how I wanted her back and those sorts of things. So, her being my wife was already known. That to me, that was already my goal. Right before I moved out to Dallas, like that was the reason why I moved to Dallas. From that point on, it was just a matter of timing to make sure that when we dated again, everything worked my mental clock was I wanted us to date again for a year, problem free, issue free. Understanding relatively understanding in understanding that the mistakes I had made in the past, she could not just immediately have amnesia and forget all of those. So understanding that was still going to be a challenge, of something triggering her and getting her upset, and then we have an argument for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and 2 hours, maybe a day long. Understanding those type of challenges that we may have in the short term, I still wanted her to be my wife. And so that's why I wanted that year of dating to say, okay, year of dating, cool. So we would have dated for a year, and then within 6 months I would have proposed to her. So that was my mental timeline.
And I think oftentimes guys have these plans and how they want to approach things, especially as it relates to women.
Right.
And so for me, it sounds like, hey, you see this person, all the potential in the world, future baby mama, future wife.
Baby mama.
And, but you're not ready in terms of whatever it is. Like for you, it was you got an entrepreneurial ambition that you want to see through. Mm-hmm. Someone else is like, I'm in a D League, or I'm playing in Europe.
Right.
Or I'm a musician, a singer, whatever it is, right? That is holding you back from to even start thinking about it through that lens of marriage and family. And so I think you have a special case where she recognized that and was like, okay. Yeah. And there's some people that are like, no, we have to be together or never again. Yeah. And so I guess how do you, like, what are your words or thoughts? Like, what if she wasn't like that? How would you have seen it going?
So that's a really good question. So one of the things, and we have friends or people we're associated with who have asked us kind of how we made it work. I think the fact that we didn't speak at all for a year plus, was the most important thing that we ever did.
Why do you say that?
Because we completely, I want to say, essentially kind of purged ourselves of any type of relationship. So we weren't friends, we weren't associates, we weren't Facebook friends, we weren't Instagram friends. If you asked me how she was doing, I wouldn't know. If you asked her how I was doing, she wouldn't know. And I think what happens sometimes is people break up and they for one think that what happens today determines the future in a lot of situations, especially at that age. I think it's the wrong mentality to have.
And what age is that?
Well, for us, it was mid-20s. Okay. We were mid-20s. And so for us to break up and say we'll never talk to each other and da-da-da. I mean, she said that. When we had the conversation to break up the engagement, she said, I never want to talk to you again, blah, blah, blah. And that's fine, and obviously here we are, years later.
So
we're married.
Just for a sec. So when she said that, did she understand that you were doing, I don't want to say her a favor, but did she understand the selflessness in that, or she was just like bitter and not bitter is not the word. No, I mean, upset about the fact that you were breaking up.
She was upset because
I just want people to know the emotion that happened. Not that you were like, hey, I'm picking my career over you, and she was like, you know what, baby, I understand it. Holler at me later. Like, what was her reaction?
It wasn't a quick conversation either, and honestly, it was essentially, she said, "Do you think we should just keep trying? Could try?" And I said, "No, I just wasn't in it. My heart just wasn't in it, and I knew continually trying it, we weren't going to get anywhere. Right? We'll continue to be frustrated and all those sorts of things, and and just to quickly, because we keep saying entrepreneurial exploits." I was pursuing a career in music, not rapping but music management, right? So that requires me to, not only was I working a 9 to 5, and my commute, living in Los Angeles was an hour and a half to work and an hour and a half back. So, my time was very limited to our relationship, and it was long distance. So being on a phone for an hour and a half and doing I just didn't have time or energy from that. And I was somewhat depressed because I was like, oh, my career, my life isn't going where I want it to go. So all those things just factor into not being a good partner, right? I just mentally was not prepared to be a good partner. So, even though she was saying, I never want to talk to you again, da da da. In my head, I'm always optimistic. I'm just like, oh yeah, okay, she's saying that now, but you never know what'll happen. That's always my saying. You never know where life will lead us. You never know where we will be in 3 or 4 or 5 years. And we ended up being in the optimal situation to get back together and obviously eventually get married. Had she had the mentality and actually stuck to it of we would never get back together again, that's something I have to live with, right? I would have had to live with the thing that, because of me not being ready at that time, I missed out on a great woman. But I also believe things happen for a reason, right? So if we never spoke again, and to this day we had never spoken again, and we weren't friends or anything, then it was meant to be. And I think that would have put us both in positions to still be successful. I don't think my life would have been a disappointment because of a decision I made years ago that related to a woman or a partner at the age of 25, right? Because if that decision would have determined my future success and my future life, then that's tragic. To say, oh, my life would have been completely different. I'm 35, 40 years old saying, man, if I never would have blew it with that so-and-so girl, then no, maybe if you would have responded appropriately to it and moved on with your life and continued to grind and hustle in whatever arena you were pursuing, I don't think that partner should determine your success in life. They enhance your life, right? They shouldn't be the determining factor in how your life is, right?
Wise words, my friend. Well, we are out of time. I want to thank you for sharing and thank everyone out there for listening. Please subscribe to the I Think I Love My Wife podcast and follow us on Instagram at ThinkLoveWife for more updates and discussion. Next time, we will explore the pressures of failure and its impact on mental health, the stigma of being a strong Black man, and the importance of commitment and boundaries. I hope you enjoyed it and the conversation keeps going.